Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier, and thank you, as always, for stopping by. I hope it's been a good week. Let me first give you a link to some reflections of mine on the Kenya special report that was issued by the Financial Times. It's a short video and covers what was said in the report and what I think about it. Macro thoughts. I still like this quote: in the business, a subtle but crucial informational advantage was called H. Richard Holwell. Wall Street has been left reeling as 2018 has so far upended almost every bet going. Very good chart from Bloomberg explaining what's happened to asset prices. Lowest close since late October 2017. That is not the definition of a bull trend. That's Peter Brandt reflecting on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is last at 5,872. And this is a 2017 October low, and it really is a cliff edge from here. 2nd of January this year, I said I'm no longer bullish Bitcoin. In fact, I'm bearish. And then on the 27th of November, I took profit on a proposed long position on Bitcoin that I'd instituted at the beginning of the year. And I said then, Bitcoin, wow, what a ride. And I was quoting Hunter S. Thompson, and then I was quoting Thomas Pynchon. It is a curve each of them feels unmistakably. It is the parabola. They must have guessed, once or twice guessed, and refused to believe that everything always collectively had been moving toward that purified shape latent in the sky, that shape of no surprise, no second chance, no return. Here is another chart from Red Tyrone. As we said, last trading at 5,890 and headed lower, in my opinion. Home thoughts. This is from William Dalrymple, the Bodhisattva Maitreya Gandhara from 100 AD. Quite arresting. I like this. Roadblock Masai Mara from Angama Safari. That took me to Jack Kerouac on the road. Nothing behind me, everything ahead of me, as is ever on the road. Another quote: the road must eventually lead to the whole world, Jack Kerouac said. January 2013, I wrote a piece about the road, on the road, Nairobi, Mombasa. And I said the Nairobi-Mombasa road arrows into immensities and is impossible to believe. It retains a near mystical hold on my imagination and connects me to my childhood and beyond. And this is a photograph which was entitled "A Long Shot of Night Road Arrowing Forlorn into Immensities and Flat of Impossible to Believe America in New Mexico under the Prisoner's Moon," Robert Frank. Here's a photograph I took when we took a road trip in the Mara last year. And this is another one from Sirikoi Lodge. Nothing behind me, everything ahead of me, as is ever on the road. I like this tweet from Eliud Kipchoge, who of course was a wonderful guest on Mindspeak. Another great session in the books, he tweeted. And this was my pre-Mindspeak interview with Eliud at the Intercontinental earlier this year. Political reflections. Populism hasn't been this high since World War II. And boy, don't we know it. The challenge with populism is that it's coming unstuck. It's surely predictable and predicted. But the point is that journey to getting to that point, when the epiphany happens, and we're nowhere near there at the moment. Prime Minister Theresa May hosted His Highness the Aga Khan at Downing Street yesterday and said our partnership with the Ismaili Imamate has made a positive impact. Can you please talk to us about the dead reporters in Annapolis? Why are you walking away? This is NBC News. Do you have any words of condolence for the families, Mr. President? Why are you walking away? President Trump does not comment when asked about the deadly Maryland newsroom shooting. The Russian bear is huge and wild. It has devoured the infant child. The infant child is not aware it has been eaten by the bear. Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters talking about Putin and Trump, using A.E. Housman, the poet's Infant Innocence, to detail the Putin-Trump relationship. My conclusions are that Putin apparently pocketed the Donald a while back. Have a look at this. Ambassador John Bolton meeting with Putin, and I said it's the equivalent of delivering a head on a silver platter. October 2015, I wrote a piece about how Putin is a geopolitical grandmaster, about the Syrian intervention and a little bit more. And then I like this divine comedy, Name the Level of Hell, from Dr. Leo Strauss. December 2016, I wrote about Putin's intervention in the US election, and I said we have a deviate tomahawk. And I said then my starting point is the election of President Donald Trump, because hindsight will surely show that Russia ran a seriously sophisticated program of interference, mostly digital. Don DeLillo is a prophetic 21st century writer, writes as follows in one of his short stories. The specialist is monitoring data on his mission console when a voice breaks in, a voice that carried with it a strange and unspecifiable poignancy. He checks in with his flight dynamics and conceptual paradigm officers at Colorado Command. We have a deviate tomahawk. We copy, there's a voice. We have gross oscillation here. There's some interference. I've gone redundant, but I'm not sure it's helping. We're clearing an outframe to locate the source. Thank you, Colorado. It is probably just selective noise. You are negative red on the step function quad. It was a voice, I told them. We have just received an affirm on selective noise. We will correct Tomahawk. In the meantime, advise you to stay redundant. The voice, in contrast to Colorado's metallic pigeon, is a melange of repartee, laughter, and song, with a quality of purest, sweetest sadness. Somehow, we are picking up signals from radio programs of 40, 50, 60 years ago. I like this tweet from Bloomberg. Once upon a time, Germany made great cars, elected stable governments, and won the World Cup. International markets, the Chinese yuan and the Shanghai Composite in free fall on trade war worries. China now faces a July the 6th deadline. White House trade advisor Navarro says 301 probe shows China steals tech, forces transfer. He's referencing the Section 301 investigation, which will target China in 2 waves. Stocks of Eurozone auto sector companies are down more than 11% during the last 10 trading days because of the trade wars. Germany's DAX is down more than 7% during the last 10 trading days. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar had a little bit of a bounce, which is now fading. 116.18 last. Dollar index 94.90. Japanese yen 110.65. Swiss franc 0.9941. The pound 131.09. The Australian dollar 0.7387. Indian rupee slightly improving off a record low 68.565. South Korean won 11.1541. Brazilian real 386.32. Egyptian pound, which of course devalued way before everything else started happening, is holding in there at 17.915. The rand bumps a little bit higher to 1369.07, but trades very fragile. Dollar index, let me put up a 3-month chart. Look, I still think it's unfolding. I think it heads towards 100, but I'm just worried we dip a little bit before we do that. Euro still underpricing European risks. Reuters report citing a big drop of the European banking index. That's from Olga again. And of course, the euro bounced after EU leaders reached a migrant deal. J.S. Blockland saying the deal is pretty opaque at this stage, however. I couldn't agree more. The key level for the euro dollar is 115.10, which is a double bottom. Australian dollar, have a look at this chart, still inside a downtrend and continues to fall. Amazon gives pharmacy chains a headache. Look at the price reaction since the announcement. And this is something Amazon has in its toolkit to absolutely crush any competition. They did it when, of course, they went into the supermarket space as well. Commodity markets, gold, which has had a terrible time, back at $12.50 trading. Crude oil, of course, has been on a roll. That's now trading in New York at $72.65. That's all about Iran. And this is an interesting chart of silver from T commodity. Emerging markets, Starbucks is opening a new store in China every 15 hours. The average ROI per store is 86%. Many talk about the opportunity in China, but few execute. EMFX year to date is pretty brutal. Yes, it is. This is from Jonathan Ferro. As I said on the 14th of May, this is all the ingredients for baking a good old-fashioned crisis. I see a thread, submerging markets, J.S. Blockland. Emerging markets, currencies are looking uglier by the day. That's coming from Bloomberg. Analysts predict more pain for India's rupee after hitting a record low. And emerging market economies, central banks are losing the battle with the market. So it was as I predicted, that you could see it, the ingredients all being put into the mix. Sub-Saharan Africa, market rout sends African assets from the rand to bonds reeling. The emerging market sell-off is taking a heavy toll on Africa. The continent's bonds and stocks are being hammered more than most in other regions in a rout that's wiped over $1 trillion off developing nations' equity markets this quarter and sapped confidence from Brazil to China. Africa's status as the world's fastest growing continent after Asia has done little to spare it as traders' appetite for higher yields wanes and they rush to cut exposure to the riskiest markets. Since the end of March, African Eurobonds, local currency debt and equities have posted worse returns than those for emerging markets as a whole. Currencies have performed in line with peers, though they're still down more than 6% against the dollar. African Eurobond yields are rising more sharply than the emerging market average. Average rates on dollar notes issued by African governments have climbed to 7.6%, around 200 basis points above where they were in January, according to Standard Bank Group. Look at Zambia, for example. The yields have soared to more than 11% as investors fret that President Lungu won't strike a bailout deal with the IMF. He hasn't got any other options. Global money managers have also sold off local currency bonds. They are Africa's worst performing assets this quarter, with the AFMI Bloomberg African Bond Index, which includes Botswana, Egypt, Ghana, Kenya, Namibia, Nigeria, South Africa, and Zambia, losing 12% in dollar terms. South African securities have taken an awful beating as well. The rand itself has been under pressure. It's weakened 15% against the dollar since March, more than any other major currency tracked by Bloomberg, and it's heading for its worst quarter since September 2011. Equity markets, while none of the major bourses are in a bear market, unlike China, which entered one earlier this week, they're heading in that direction. Egypt, Kenya, Morocco, Nigeria, and South Africa have all experienced technical corrections, meaning that they're down 10% from their 2018 peaks. They'll be in bear markets if the fall extends to 20%. Now, I was sort of predicting this on the 5th of February this year when I spoke about Halcyon days, and I said, from the Latin Alcyone, daughter of Aeolus and the wife of Ceyx, when her husband died in a shipwreck, Alcyone threw herself into the sea, whereupon the gods transformed them both into Halcyon birds. Halcyon bird is a kingfisher. When Alcyone made her nest on the beach, waves threatened to destroy it. Aeolus restrained his winds and kept them calm during 7 days in each year, so she could lay her eggs. These became known as Halcyon days when storms do not occur. Today the term is used to denote a past period that is being remembered for being happy and or successful. On the 5th of February, I said the markets worldwide exited its Halcyon days. And I was saying on the same date, emerging market and frontier market borrowers surely need to get their skates on and pull the trigger real quick on any borrowing they had been considering for this year. I said, interestingly, JP Morgan's MB spread is down to 258 basis points, the tightest since mid-2014. How long this lasts is anybody's guess. And that's why I was saying, and I was expecting a turn, which we got. I also wrote another piece earlier in the year, Africa Calling. I said, of course, Africa is not a country. In fact, the continent is seriously non-linear. And therefore, when you see, a generic thing about Africa in a sell-off, you can't stand in front of a freight train, but, you've got to pick your spots. Today in Dar es Salaam, I had an excellent and productive meeting with President Magufuli, that's President Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe. The Economist is saying, try not to rig, hopes are high that the poll next month will be fairer than those in the past. It's still not clear to me whether Mnangagwa has done enough to win this election, because I've got friends in Zimbabwe who I respect and talk to quite frequently, and they're really at their wits' end and are prepared to consider a change. I randomly Googled several African countries and found the number one question Googled about each nation is it safe to travel to the name of the African country? That's all about Africa. His Excellency Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was visiting Afar, and he said Afar is home of Lucy, source of the human race, the very core of Ethiopianism. Even an Afar camel recognizes the Ethiopian flag. He really is something, isn't he? And then in a joint venture with China, Ethiopia has begun extracting crude oil and natural gas. That's Chigel coming into my space on the continent. Miners across Africa are increasingly using one-time payments to settle disputes with governments, a trend that's disturbing some investors. $150 million payment by Glencore's Katanga Mining to the DRC's Gekamine earlier this month followed Freeport separate $100 million settlement with the state-owned company in January 2017. South African oil shares down 6.23% this year. Dollar versus rand, oh my. Have a look at this chart, 6-month chart, to get a flavor of the type of move we've seen. Nigerian oil shares down 1.33% year-to-date. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 11.63% year-to-date. Tanzania is resuming transporting cargo to Uganda through its TRC Central Railway line. And apparently it's cutting costs by about $2,000, so pretty important. If you did not get a chance to read that FT special report on Kenya, that link is on the website under Kenya, and of course the video that I did reflecting upon some of the things that were said. Now I received an email update from IHS Market, and look at what they said yesterday. Probable forced removal of Kenya's deputy president indicated by anti-corruption investigation beginning in July, increasing legislative disruption. This is Chris Suckling, the senior analyst. Kenya President Kenyatta's lifestyle audit is likely to form the basis of impeachment proceedings to block Deputy President William Ruto's 2022 election bid by removing him from office this year. Kenyatta's allies in the ruling Jubilee Party are building support for the 2/3 parliamentary majority necessary to approve Ruto's impeachment, primarily by cooperating with the main opposition Orange Democratic Movement. Regardless of the outcome, resulting splits within the ruling and opposition parties will increase legislative disruption, reducing the likelihood of corporate tax increases and delaying the finalization of revenue shares within a proposed petroleum bill. Dirty sugar does not only have mercury, but copper, lead, but also other heavy metals, says C.S. Matiangi. Fruit juices, alcohol, ketchup, also contaminated, he said. Then in another report on the Standard, food crisis was planned from last year, says former agriculture minister. And that's a very detailed analysis of what actually happened. Uhuru Kenyatta said that if his brother Muhoho Kenyatta is found to have imported contraband sugar, he should be dealt with by the relevant government agencies. In this photograph, we see the president officially opening the Kenya-US Trade Conference at the UN Kenya complex, and this included the likes of Bechtel, OPIC, IBM, and many others were there. Look at this comparison of African currency performance, and you'll see that the Kenya shilling has been a big outlier on the bull side this year. Nairobi all shares up 2.51% so far this year, but it's still 10.719% below a record high set on April 5. The NSE 20 is down 11.39% year to date. The mainstream retail sector in Nairobi has been on the decline in terms of performance, recording 9 percentage points decline in occupancy to 18.3% in 2017, mostly attributable to the increased supply of mall space. That's as per Saiton. This is a photograph of the old Savo railway station from the Agora. Really, the Savo is the most incredible place to visit. By 1899, railhead had reached Nairobi, which at the time was nothing more than a seasonal swamp. A railway depot was built in the same year, and from these humble beginnings, a city was born. The picture shows the entire railway estate with the railway houses and offices on the left, the station in the center background, and the railway workshops on the right. And look at this, it looks really modern. Opening of the Nakuru railway station, 14th of June 1957, by the then governor of Kenya, Sir Evelyn Baring. And finally, let's close out with KCB, which is saying that Ethiopia is ready for takeoff. We are very much confident that between now and the next 2 years, we'll have an opportunity, Joshua Ogaira said. Our focus is clients conducting business with Ethiopia from the Eastern Africa region. KCB share price data is also one of the final links on Rich wrap-ups, trailing PE of 7.232. And with that, I shall take my leave and wish you a tremendous weekend.